Hello, it's time for... Oh my God, help me! Kablamo, kabloomy. That was a nice long nap. Oh, hang on a sec. That's a squeaking sound, and what does that squeaking sound mean? It means live on tape from an secret, undisclosed location, hidden somewhere deep in the bowels of historic downtown St. John's, comes in the Library of Graphic Literature with your host, me, Wallace Rye. Another little spin on it there. I guess secret and undisclosed are kind of the same thing. I know I say it every week, but hey, heck, I still kind of like it. Anyway, so I got a cup of tea here. I got all my fluffy pals, Krusty and Alf and the kitty cat and Superman, and I'm ready to go. Now, this week is a special episode. There wasn't a lot of comics out this week, or a lot of books out this week, that I got anyway. But I did get one cool book, but when I got it too, I'd seen a certain author online talking about it because it contained some of his work and all that. I thought, hey, I don't think I've ever covered him before. So, this week, live, coming to you from the Library of Graphic Literature, comes my special, my Don McGregor episode. So Don, I hope you like this, because I know he's going to see it. He's always been one of my favorite writers, so I picked up a small little collection of some of his works here just to go through and have a chat with you about it. And this way you can see some of his early work. I think this may be the first time I've actually talked about a writer, because I'm usually talking about artists. But hey, Don is an artist. He's an artist with words. But yeah, he wrote some of my favorite comics and some rather story comics in a lot of ways. So I figured, hey, we got to talk about them. So we will. Let's do that. Don was born in 1945 in Providence, Rhode Island, and he first got into comics. I think it was with the that I can remember coming across his name in terms of that in some of the Warren publications, and in the Warren publications, it's interesting actually. I have two here to show you. I have Creepy number 40, which was his first published work, but I also have Airy number 45, which was contains his really first piece that he submitted, but it was published later. So I figured I'd start with that. So we're going to start with Creepy number 40, and I have it here in the this edition of the Creepy Archives, and let's open it up to the page. And here we go. That was a cool story, The Fade Away Walk. And the art is by Tom Sutton, who's, as anyone who's watched the show before knows, I'm a big fan of. So I'm not going to go too much through because I don't want to inadvertently give away the end of it. But it's a great little futuristic piece. Now he did about a dozen stories or more for Warren across Creepy, Eerie. I do believe he even did some Vampirella stuff in that, and The Rook too, I do believe. But yeah, great stuff. Now here, this is his first. The first shall be the last, and the last will be first. Now the art is by Suso, who, to be quite honest, until I found this, when I was looking up, was not sure who was. Okay, here's the edition of the Creepy Archives it comes in. And this is When Wakes the Dreamer. Another great story here. Won't go too much into it because I don't want to spoil it. But it involves, let's just say, something wolf-like. Love the artwork too. Great. It does suit it. But yeah, so that was that was his actual first real work. Now he began working. Pardon me for a sip of tea here. He began working as a proofreader for Marvel in 1972, and then moved up to editor and / writer, and he sort of pushed and shoved until they gave him something to write too, because the editors were only making so much, so they supplemented some of their work with a bit of writing. And they gave him two interesting titles to work on. One was Amazing Adventures, War of the Worlds, later to become known as Killraven. And he picks up on this one in 21. It goes to 39. I think minus 2 issues in between, I do believe, that I can remember. The second to last one, I do believe. 38 and I think it was 38, 33 and 38, that's it, which were by Mantlo, ironically enough. But yeah, it was, let's go to his first one here. Now, of course, the War of the Worlds started out as with actually Neil Adams and Howard Chaykin working on it. Let's see, Neil Adams and Chaykin, yeah. And it was first started out with Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, and I had this issue actually, and it was okay. It started out looking pretty good, and then let's move ahead here to here we go. And then the issue he starts is with Herb Trimp, I do believe, yeah, Herb Trimp. And here we go. Here's a good look at the issue in particular, and I've read the entire series. Actually, I've read it a couple of times. I love this series, and except for 2 issues, he went all the way through. Now, he had a few different artists along the way. Trimp early on, then Rich Buckler. I love Rich Buckler, especially when Rich was inked by Klaus Janson. He really shone, right? And then throw in an issue of with Gene Colan, who he would go on to work with on many things. And then came along Mr. P. Craig Russell, and he I do believe this is, yeah, and that's cool sterling cover there, by the way, and that's where it really took off. It was now this one's inked by Jack Abel, so it doesn't really look a lot like what we know as Russell's work. Oh, and then here we have, actually it's just Craig Russell here, I just noticed that. Now this goes on to, and this is a great issue here. He really started to, I mean, Russell had been working with Marvel for a while, but it was on Killraven that his work really took off. Absolutely stunning artwork. So I mean, it was a great comic. The amazing writing and great art. We're lucky, you're lucky to get that, right? It's one thing to get a great story and, you know, and serviceable art, but this had it in spades. That was the cool thing about Killraven. And this book also does include the graphic novel that came years later, Killraven there, which I absolutely loved. Another great one, beautiful coloring, great artwork, and great story. So, highly, highly recommend. Killraven is one of my favorite 70 stories, hands down. The cool thing about that, and the historic thing about it, is that's I think it was in issue 31 is the first interracial kiss in mainstream comics, at least, between Mishula and Carmilla Frost. But back in creepy number 43 is where, once again, McGregor portrays the first interracial kiss in comics. So the man's a trailblazer. Let's just put it that way. Then, of course, let's have a cup of tea. It's quite warm out here on the East Coast tonight. That's why I'm sweating to death, by the way. And of course, nothing better for the heat than a cup of tea. Okay, anyway. So then comes along Jungle Action with the Black Panther. And this is an absolutely amazing piece of work. This is McGregor along with Rich Buckler and Billy Graham, and not that Billy Graham. As a matter of fact, this entire book is all Don's work, and it's just so cool. It was, it was one of the first times I can remember reading a comic, and it really was a multi-issue story. And even at the time, it stood out to me because it was just like, wow, this story keeps on going. It's just like, we're getting just chapters of this individual story as it goes through and through. And it's absolutely amazing. I love Buckler's work. I was always a big fan of Buckler myself. But, and Billy Graham's work with this is just absolutely amazing. So here it is, the Panther's Rage is more or less the story, and starts out with Rich Buckler and Klaus Jensen, and the stories for the most part take place in Wakanda, and this is where you come across. Oh yeah, look at this. This is a great. I like this. This was a great homage to Steranko. So loved this one, but yeah, absolutely amazing story. Killmonger, that was his name. Couldn't remember it for the life of me. So and this one, Don has mentioned, I do believe, in the credits in the Panther movie, because I mean, there's so much that is taken in one way or another from here, because this is really the first. It's the first Panther solo adventures that I can think of, because otherwise he just appeared in Avengers and Fantastic Four. So this was his first shot at going it alone. But yeah, the artwork. I'll give you a shot of the artwork while you're at it. Even though we're talking, look at that, and Gil Kane. I'd forgotten that Kane had done some of the work for this too. See? Yep, Gil Kane and Keith Pollard. I remember the Keith Pollard issue. Look at that Gil Kane work. The man knows it. And then to Billy Graham and Klaus Jensen. Absolutely stunning artwork. Great, and like I say, great stories. And it holds together right all the way through. I can even remember as a kid buying that last issue of, I think I had the last issue growing up. This issue I had. This is actually, I did like this issue. This is Keith Pollard. And Rich Buckler did the layouts. But yeah, Another great story. And of course, he would come back years later. Don would come back years later with a storyline called Panther's Quest that ran in the Marvel Comics Presents during the 90s, from '89 on, and that one he did, I think, mainly with Gene Colan, and I think that was all Gene Colan. I could be wrong, but hey. Anyway, so and he also did some work with Luke Cage, a couple of stories in this one. I mean, I could be hauling volumes out. He did a lot of single stories here and there. He did a really cool story with Marshall Rogers in the Spider-Man in the 90s. That was really cool. That I would recommend. And in this one, it even says here he did 28, 30, and 31. So yeah, and he did a lot of other stories here and there for Marvel, and all great. I loved them. All great little individual stories. And now it comes to this, and this actually was a book that I was going to sort of feature this week anyway, because it's brand new. And in this, he does 4 stories, I do believe. So very different too, because you're adapting a classic work. I used to love these, especially the first 12. I was big fans on. The first 12 in the Marvel Classics were actually done by Pendulum Press, I think it was, something like that, and they were Marvel had more or less licensed them, and then from issue 13 on, they began producing their own special, their own issues and all that. Which is too bad, because there's a lot of cool work in the early ones too. But yeah, so Don did 3 of those. Make sure to lay my books aside here without crushing them or anything like that. And that brings us to 1978. Doom, 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 doom. And I seen an ad in a comic or something like that. And it was an ad for as they called it, a graphic novel. And this was even just slightly before Contract with God. So in some ways, this really jumps the gun on all Will. But it's Sabre with Don McGregor and Paul Gulacy, or Gulacy. I don't know. Gulacy. I guess Gulacy sounds cool. But I always like Gulacy's work. I was a big fan of his too, from his work at Master of Kung Fu. So when I seen in the ad that McGregor and him were doing a book together, I actually did order it and got it through the mail and all that, which was very cool. This is now we did have a comic book store in our town at the time, but I had to get it through the mailing. I do believe. We'll have a look at it here. And I love his storytelling, how it brings it in here. Talking about life back then, the different characters, stuff like that, and it was very much an adult. It was an adult comic to me. It was just like, this is so cool. This I could see this be. We'd just been introduced the year before to heavy metal, and myself and my friend Jerry, we were big heavy metal fans. And then Don and Paul come out with this Sabre. So this really did start to show basically the way where things were going towards. And he continued to do so with other works, including this one I'm going to show you here now, Detective Incorporated. Hang on a sec. This came out about 2 years after, and it was with Marshall Rogers, the first story anyway. And I had this. I bought it, of course, as a young. Well, I was 19 or 20 years old at the time, and it was called. The story was called "A Remembrance of Threatening Green," Now, I don't know if they have no, they don't have the original cover in this. But it had a really cool cover to it. And the first, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, they do have a picture somewhere. Although you can't really tell it here. This was the cover, and it was from Eclipse Comics. Now, the cool thing about this, it was like I say, this is Marshall Rogers at some of his best. I absolutely love this comic. It was detective. It had a little bit of everything in it. And the neat thing about this that I thought was really cool was when this person comes to him to hire them to do something. It's not usually, of course, especially back then, usually was, you know, a woman coming to find out about her husband cheating, or you know, someone coming looking for someone missing or whatever. But what was different about this was that the client was a woman who was looking for her lover, and this comic had the first lesbian kiss in mainstream comics. So that's one thing I like about Don. He's obviously he's got the love thing happening, but very cool, very ahead of his time. It's great story. It's worth reading too. It's a fabulous story. I loved it, and he did work in Eclipse magazine, and and here's the and this one I really like too. This was with Gene Colan. This was the second Detective Inc. story, but this was done in pencil, and I like this too because they still reproduced it very well for just pencils. And of course, Gene Colan. Gene was the dean, and Don was the man. But yeah, great story too. You can tell. I used to have this one customer at my store who, when he'd be looking at a comic, he'd look for a comic with a lot of dialogue, because his theory was that any comic that had a lot of dialogue had to be a good comic. And that's what I can say with this. This is definitely a good comic. Now, of course, he went on. He did. Let's see. He also did. Oh, I forgot. He also did a Sabre series for Eclipse that lasted. Oh God, probably about 3 years, and that one's worth checking out. He did a Panther's Prey with Dwayne Turner years later in '91, which was really cool. He was also known for a Zorro series he did for Topps and Lady Rawhide, which was sort of I guess branched off from Zorro. And he did a Zorro strip too with Thomas Yates, and he actually did get back to Black Panther recently. He did a story for the Black Panther annual. I think it was about 2 years ago. So and like I say, this is only scratching the surface of the stuff that Don did. You can go online and like I say, look up. He did a lot of other single stories here and there through the years, but. Oh yeah, and then Nathaniel Dusk. I always forget that one. That was a series he did with Gene Colan, Nathaniel Dusk, and Nathaniel Dusk 2 for DC. And they were going to collect it, and I think it got cancelled or pushed back or whatever. And if there's anyone from DC listening, for God's sake, get that book out. Absolutely beautiful. Anyway, that's my little look here at Don McGregor, one of comics premier writers, and especially from the 70s with him, Engelhard, Gerber. He was one of the new hot writers that came out of the 70s, and he continued to blow us away for years to come. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hopefully next week I'll have a big pile of new books to go over, but I enjoy waxing eloquent on on writers and artists of old. I think I will, I will start to talk a bit more about writers, because it's kind of fun, because you get a lot of artists involved. Especially someone like Don, because he partnered with a lot of different people. Anyway, that being said, it's that time again. When I call up that boom tube, and I get pulled away into that existence. Okay, thank you very much, folks. Oh, it's starting to pull me. Okay, I'll see you next week. Thanks for having me over. Oh God, how do you turn this off? Oh, there.